right, everybody, we have reached the top of the hour. So I want to say good afternoon to our friends out on the East Coast, anyone in New England. Hopefully, you're not too sore from shoveling and digging out from yet another nor'easter. Good morning to our friends who are out on the West Coast, and to our friends who are in the Central Time Zone, like myself here in Minneapolis. We hope you're going to enjoy this webinar over your lunch hour. My name is Scott Clayson. I'm the Director of Marketing at InTime Solve Corporation. I'm really excited to show you all in the next hour or so what we think can be a real game changer in how you bill your clients and move past the stigma that charging a flat fee or a fixed fee to your customers means that your firm is going to lose money. In fact, I think we'll be showing you that charging a flat fee can actually enable higher profits for your firm. And you'll see that in the next 45 minutes to an hour or so. So a couple of housekeeping items as we get started here. Everyone who has joined us for the webinar is on mute. And I am recording this webinar, and we'll send a link to a replay after we get done in a follow-up email. So if for whatever reason you need to leave early, you get a phone call, something comes up, I will be sending an email after we finish this webinar so you can watch a replay later at the InTime Solve YouTube channel. So I do anticipate this webinar lasting about 45 minutes or so, and will for sure not go more than an hour, which is what we were scheduled on your calendar. I want to be very respectful of everyone's time. So with that being said, let's take a look at our agenda for today's webinar. We're first going to talk about what I kind of call the fixed fee conundrum, or the state of fixed fees in the legal billing world. And then second, we'll be showing you the tools for building the right fixed fee, a profitable fixed fee, a fixed fee that you can confidently give to your client and know that it's going to be a money maker for your firm. And then the last part of that, sort of the next level, is how to establish fixed fees in a way that can actually leverage higher profits overall for your firm. So that's what we have on the docket for today. Before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about us, InTime Solve, myself. Like I said, I'm the Director of Marketing for InTime Solve. I actually have spent 20 plus years kind of off and on developing marketing initiatives and campaigns. I was actually, before I came to InTime Solve about 2 years ago, I was the marketing director for a large amateur sports complex in the Twin Cities. I'm also a former high school history teacher for several years. So I love doing these webinars because it gets me back to my teaching roots. And I put a couple of pictures up there. Kind of, that's my family, my wife and my son. We like going somewhere warm in the wintertime. Even though I live in Minnesota, I've lived here for many years. I'm a native Californian, and I think my blood is just too thin, and handling these cold weather winters in Minnesota, I always like to go somewhere warm if I can. So that's a little bit about myself, where I'm coming from. I've loved getting into the legal tech world here the last several years since I've been with InTime Solve, and it's really interesting to see how the legal world leverages the technology available to be more efficient and provide more useful tools for their clients. So let's talk a little bit about InTime Solve just briefly. We actually started in 1999 as an online time billing solution, and were developed by Thomson Reuters Elite division. And then the company was spun off in 2006 as a standalone company, and we've built out more elaborate tools over the years besides just tracking time and generating invoices, including some tools that you're going to see today. And one of the real things behind InTime Solve's, what our mission is we really do believe in helping law firms become more profitable. And well, what I'm going to show you today, you'll see how it works within the Time Solve system. This is very much tools and information that you can use with your existing time and billing system, with your existing case management tools. You can even do this in an Excel file, what I'm going to show you. So it's a lot of valuable content, I think, beyond just using Time Solve to solve some of these problems. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about why you all are here today and why you're spending time with me. We know that there's always been a struggle between clients who may have a lot of anxiety about paying by the hour, but firms who know that if they provide a fixed fee ahead of time, could end up losing money on the project. If it takes a lot more hours than what they quoted, they could be in trouble. So you have this kind of butting of the heads here that has often happened for a long time in the legal industry. There was recently, maybe 2 years ago or so, a great article that I came across on LinkedIn, and it's called Rebelling Against the Billable Hour. And it's by Tim Williams. He's a pricing strategist for professional services based out in Utah. So not just law firms, but other industries that do charge by the hour, CPAs, architects, PR firms, and so on. And the premise was that since the turn of the century, so for almost 2 decades now, a lot of professional service industries have really felt the pressure to provide a pricing model that makes sense for the client who wants to feel they're getting a full value for their buy. And keep in mind that this is not an impossible task. Many service industries thrive and are very successful without the billable hour concept. According to an article that was in the Washington Post a while back, the number of law firm leaders who expect non-hourly billing practices to eventually dominate the legal industry has jumped from 28% when surveyed in 2009 to 80% in 2013. So this is a bit of a dated survey. This is already almost 5 years old. But the idea just in that time period from '09 to 2013 that law firm leaders went from only just over a quarter of them thinking that non-hourly billing would eventually dominate to 80%. I bet that number now, if they did that survey, would be closer to 90%, that eventually the non-hourly billing practice is going to dominate the entire legal industry. And for some practice areas, that ship has definitely already sailed. Fixed fees are standard. Estate planning is one area. Transactional law, dealing with a lot of contracts and so on. Oftentimes, you're able to easily present a fixed fee. Bankruptcy, some domestic relations, things that may not necessarily, with divorces, those could potentially go to court, but child custody, other things that may not necessarily always go there. To a degree, domestic relations has a fixed fee kind of history to it. Tax law is another specialty area. The one area that really has, it's difficult to get into the fixed fee area is litigation because you just don't know. There's so many unknowns in the number of hours it's going to take that that's more of a struggle in presenting a fixed fee. But even in those areas, there's a lot of firms that will present a kind of a blend. They'll have a fixed fee for the work that they know they have to do, and then they have contingency fee kind of type things built in because they don't know the hourly, the things that will happen hourly if they have to go to court and for a long period of time and so on. So let's talk about how what most other service providers have sort of solved the billable hour concept. And let's look at a car analogy. Car dealers, let's say. When was the last time, you brought your car to a dealership to get it serviced and, they said, well, we'll let you know how much it costs after we've worked on it. It really just depends on how many hours we spend fixing it. No, of course, they don't do that. They give you a detailed, often line item estimate on both the parts and the labor for the job before they actually start the work. So, but how can they estimate what to charge for labor? Well, they know based on experience how long it takes to change brake pads or replace a fuel pump or whatever it might be. And then they also communicate to you during the work in real time if something comes up that was outside the scope of what they gave you as an estimate. How many of you gotten that phone call that have, in the past that, from the dealer that you brought in, they said, hey, by the way, while we were working on, replacing your spark plugs, we found there was a cracked valve of some sort. And it's going to cost, if we do it outside of what we quoted you, it's going to be an extra $300. Do you want us to go ahead and make that repair? We get those calls all the time. So today we're going to focus on how you can look at past matters, break down and assign matters to your attorneys, and to help determine what to charge. And eventually you'll determine your most profitable matters and you can start marketing your firm in that direction. So kind of reviewing where the client is coming from when you're talking about fixed fees. Keep in mind that depending on the type of law that you practice, your clients may not deal with attorneys, lawyers, the law very often. So, they're picking up the phone already sort of in a state of anxiety. There's already a stress level there. And then if they're faced with a different kind of billing model than they're used to, the billable hour, well, that creates an additional layer of angst. I'll use a perfect example in my life. My father-in-law passed away several years ago. My wife was the executor of the estate. He lived about 3.5 hours away from us, 4.5 hours away from us. And obviously it was a very stressful time in the family. And we had to wrap up everything with his estate. We've never done that before. We don't know what it takes. So we engaged with an estate attorney down in the city where he lived. And luckily, this estate attorney had a well-established fixed fees, said, here's everything that we need to get done, and here's the cost. Boom, it's this flat fee. That alleviated a lot of stress for my wife and I in what it was going to take to close the estate. If we'd had a lawyer who had came to us and said, well, I bill by the hour. Here's all the things we have to do. I don't know. It depends. If there's things that come up when we're filing it, and maybe some of your siblings are going to get involved. Who knows? It could cost quite a bit more. I'm not really sure. I'll let you know when I get there. That would have really raised the anxiety for my wife and I. So I love this quote from Tim Williams, who wrote at the end of that article that the firms that show the initiative and charge for the value they create rather than the hours that they work, those are becoming increasingly attractive to a client community that is under ever-rising pressure to show better returns on their investments. Because, when you think about it, let's talk about the downsides of hourly billing from a law firm's perspective. There's no real incentive with a billable hour to be efficient, right? If it takes longer for the work, you get to bill more. If you are more efficient, you could potentially end up with a lower income. A second downside is there's no real reason to invest in technology because generally investing in technology means becoming more efficient. I talked to a ton of attorneys. I was just at the ABA Tech Show in Chicago last week. Ton of attorneys who still, in this day and age, don't enter their own time in whatever system they're using. They mark their time down on a spreadsheet. Maybe they'll mark their time down like on a piece of paper, post-it notes, then put it in a spreadsheet, then give it to their assistant who then enters it into whatever system is being used. That is the epitome of inefficiency. They're not investing in the technology of using something, immediately to enter their time. It also doesn't promote the billable hour, the best use of resources. Why should you have a $400 an hour person, an associate, doing something that a $100 an hour para or whoever it might be could do just as well? It's like, if you had an airline pilot who is obviously highly skilled, highly trained, working the aisles handing out peanuts, and no disrespect to those people who do that, but they weren't trained like a pilot was. So a pilot should not be back handing out the peanuts. In a law firm, somebody who has been highly trained, highly experienced, highly skilled shouldn't be engaging in a task that could be done by somebody with much less, doesn't need the experience, and is something that is more, can be done frequently and doesn't need the skill level that attorney could bring to it. But yet, despite the drawbacks of hourly billing, it's what's been done in the legal industry for well over 100 years. So what you end up in is something kind of like this. How much do you charge? How many of you have looked like this when a client has asked for an estimate or a fixed fee? I don't know. And of course, if you've charged a fixed fee before, you may have lost money. You've seen that money fly out the window, and you're hesitant to go down that road again. I'm going to use a story I love to tell from last year's ABA Tech Show. I sat next to a lawyer at a dinner who was out in, I think, Rhode Island, maybe Maine. Anyway, somewhere out east. And he did all of his work was fixed fee. And I was really interested in asking him, like, well, so how do you determine what you charge, what kind of fixed fee to present to your clients? And he looked at me and he said, I charge what I think I can get away with. He kind of basically had 30 plus years of experience, kind of knew the market in his city, what he could charge based on the competition and so on, but it had no basis in what his hard costs were for a case, what his professional cost was, what his associates professional costs were, nothing. It was basically what I could get away with. So I think there's a better way. There's a more logical and step-by-step way to establish a fixed fee with more confidence than just I charge what I think people will pay. Somebody did ask a question just briefly in the Q&A available if slides and a link will be sent. Yeah, if you joined our webinar late, I did mention at the top that I am recording this session and will be sending out a link to replay the video later, and it will also include these slides here that will hopefully help you some. So yes, those will be coming out later to answer that question. So the question for the firm side, how to calculate that fixed fee or an estimate that is is profitable, and how do you overcome that fear of losing money? What are sort of the steps in doing that? And I think it's the good place to begin in talking about that is determining where you want to be at the end. And of course, where you want to be at the end is with happy clients, right? I mean, duh, that's why we're here. You want them to walk away from their experience of using your firm happy. You've solved their problem. Hopefully they've become converts and evangelicals for your firm, and they will provide referrals that will get you even more business, which you can now then grow your firm. So the way to make a happy client at the end of the day, and most of you probably already know this, is you meet or you exceed the expectations that the client has. So step one in that, an important step, is define the expectations so that it's clearly understood what their needs are, and you're able to share a very detailed plan of action. And that defines the expectations. You're presenting them based on the discussions you had, the intake. Here are the needs. Here's the plan, step by step by step, that I have put together to solve your problem and meet your needs. That dovetails then into explaining what the costs are. Who's going to be doing the work if it's not just you? How long each part of the work is going to take? And talk about, okay, say you can have now a discussion. How long does it take to normally do research on this particular thing I need to do? Normally it takes me about 2 hours. Just so you know, I estimate it should take me 2 hours to do this type of research. Now things could come up, it could get more hairy and more complicated, and we might have to stretch it out to 3 hours, but I'm budgeting 2 hours worth of time on this. Okay? You're showing value in doing that. You're showing like I'm thought this through. Here's the value that I'm bringing. 2 hours of research on this thing that is going to help you solve your problem. Then you have to go about actually managing the expectations. To me, this is all about communicate, communicate, communicate. If you get off track, tell why. This is the equivalent of getting that phone call from your mechanic saying, I found a broken valve while I was changing your spark plugs. It's in the course of doing my research, I've come across this, which could really help, but it's going to add on some more time. Do you want to go ahead and do that? It's outside the scope of the fixed fee that I may have presented you. Or perhaps you've built in a buffer to your fixed fee as well. So you can cover an extra hour's worth of work in the fixed fee that you've quoted. And then, of course, this seems like a duh sort of thing, but you have to actually achieve those results. You have to execute the plan. And this is often the missing link. I've done a lot of project planning in my career. Both essentially teaching was project planning because you were planning lessons and then you were planning, you were planning like entire units and then planning lessons within those units. I mean, it's just project planning. And then same thing in some of my previous career work I worked in the IT department doing project planning. Oftentimes, this is the missing link. You can write all the most beautiful plans in the world, but then you actually have to execute against that plan. I'll give you an example. When I was a teacher, we were, said, hey, you got to put down, here's all the state standards that you have to meet when you're teaching American history. Boom, 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 boom. And we would, spend hours in the summer writing up kind of which parts of our, American history curriculum would match each one of those sort of checklists of requirements that we have by the state. But then we would put that in a nice, beautiful 3-ring binder. I'm dating myself here. It was a 3-ring binder. It wasn't computerized. And we would put it on a shelf in the social studies office, and we would just sit and collect dust. And then I would go about actually writing my real lesson plans for the day, for the week, and I didn't refer back to what standard am I meeting here exactly? I didn't execute the plan. I don't know who came up with this phrase, but I use it a lot. And that is, it's a simple phrase to keep in mind. Plan the work, then work the plan. Sounds simple. Plan the work, work the plan. So how do you do that as a law firm in creating that profitable fixed fee? Well, you end up using what is called Pert. Okay, and Pert basically is a breakdown of legal project management. It's a formula of how to create an accurate fixed fee estimate. Pert stands for Program Evaluation Review Technique, and it's just a planning tool, and it's used to calculate the amount of time it'll take to realistically finish a project. And it was this was created in the 1950s by the U.S. Navy to help manage the creation of weapons and defense projects. And it makes it a way to make it easier to schedule and coordinate team members who are supposed to, tasked with accomplishing that work. And in the legal world, it simply means legal project management. And here's how it works. You break down each matter before you begin into specific tasks. And I would say specific phases and then tasks. You assign the timekeepers or allocate the resources, if you will, to each task. And this is where you can determine for this particular task, what level of resource skill do I need? Do I need that $400 an hour attorney to do this particular task, or could I have somebody else do it who's at a cheaper rate? Then you go ahead and you allocate the hours to the timekeepers by task. This is the art of project planning, is where you determine based on experience, based on talking with others, how long is it going to take me to accomplish this particular task? And this is what architecture and construction companies have been doing for years and years and years. I live about 2 miles from US Bank Stadium in here in Minneapolis. Watched that thing go up over the last 18, whatever, how long it took to build it, 2 years. And, that didn't get built by accident. They allocated the number of hours specifically it would take to accomplish each little task along the way and coordinated those all together. And then the last thing is you want to define the milestones within the matter. And this is where you can break it down into phases. Potentially, and a lot of you might want to do this, you could bill your client when certain milestones are met within the matter, especially if it's a very large matter that's going to take a lot of time. When all the tasks within a particular phase are completed and done, then you generate a milestone or a billable invoice. You send an invoice based on that milestone. So to execute your PERT, the legal project management, there are a few things that you should have into place. Your time and billing really should be integrated with your project management plans so that each timekeeper can easily see the tasks that are assigned to them and what the budget has been that's been assigned to them. And then Optimally, you'd like to have a real-time warning if somebody's exceeding the task budget. And then the fourth sort of main item is that it's once you've created your project plan initially, is being able to reuse it over and over again as a template. So you don't have to recreate the wheel every time you do the same case. You already have it mostly in place. Again, it's not, we call this a requirement for execution. You could do it outside of your existing time and billing system. It'd take a little bit more time. It can be done. Absolutely can be done. So let's kind of put this in motion and actually walk through how this works. So I'm going to do this in InTime Solve, obviously, and kind of show you how you would build out a matter, assign timekeepers to it, assign hours to it, and create a budget that you could then confidently give to your client. And then on the back side, as you work the plan, make sure that you are staying on budget with what you've created. So in InTime Solve here, when you land, log into InTime Solve, by the way, you get, this is right where you land, our time entry screen, to make it fast and easy and efficient to enter your time. We have a calendar over here that shows you the number of the entries that you've created every day, so you could see quickly, hey, have I hit my billable hour goals and so on. But more importantly, what we want to do now is go over and create this project plan. And again, you could do this in Excel or wherever you need to be to do it. In InTime Solve, we're going to go over here to Clients and Matters. And I'm going to create a new client here. And we're just going to simply call it, let's just call it March Webinar. Really creative, right, Scott? And like any practice management system that you may use, there's a lot of details you can put in about your client here. The billable rate you're going to use, global rate, maybe you just do a matter rate, whatever it's going to be. So you have all these details in place for your clients. And now let's create a new matter for our client. So this is the March webinar matter. Okay. And again, you can do a lot of details here about the matter itself. We could even set, if we want, that we're going to do our invoice settings is going to be a fixed fee, time and expenses. Have that into place. This would allow us to do billable milestones if we want. In this case, in InTime Solve or wherever you want to do it, let's say you're doing it on an Excel spreadsheet, we're going to go over here. We have it built into our system, this task area. Okay, and I'm going to check the box to say, yes, I want to require professional assignments to this matter. I'm going to go ahead and I have a 7-person firm here in my dummy account, and I'm just going to make sure that a couple of these people are assigned to work the matter. So let's go ahead and then create, a plan, and we're going to do it. In this case, I'm going to create a couple of phases, and we're going to say that this is let's say we're doing an estate plan. And the first phase of this is will preparation. Great. So that's our phase. Let's add some tasks to it. So our first task maybe is to gather family information. And we're going to add that to this phase, will preparation. You could put a bigger description here. If you're going to assign this to others, you could put whatever details you want to put in here. You could put in a start date and an end date. You don't have to necessarily. You could put in dependencies eventually. We do have in InTime Solve, and most practice management and time systems have this, the leads task code. So if you're doing leads billing, you can build out your task by the leads code and create your budget that way. And we have the subtask codes and so on. So we're going to save this and do a new one. So our next task is going to be assets info. That's the next thing we do in will preparation. And we already have it in this phase. We could say, hey, it depends on gather family information being completed. But for the sake of simplicity here, we're just going to build this out in an easy way here to start. Let's build out kind of a rudimentary plan. We'll have a new phase. We're going to call this the trust preparation. And within that, we'll add tasks like trust notices. It's in this phase, trust preparation. And then let's just do one more so we have a couple in here. Trust documents, okay? If I could spell documents. If I could spell documents. Okay. You could have, then, as I mentioned before, milestones. So you could even say, because we created this as a fixed fee milestone, we could say for will preparation, we're going to have, when you've got done with assets info, we're going to create a billable milestone that you could then put a certain number of value if you want. So these are the ways that you can put in this milestone if you want to do some milestone billing. We're going to keep this fairly simple here. And if you notice in InTime Solve, now we're starting to see a kind of a logical looking, what some project planners would call a waterfall look. You have phases, tasks, and so on. If we had start dates and due dates built in, then we could even look at it in what's called the Gantt view, which would lay things out on the timeline, the duration. That's a very popular way to look at projects as you're laying them out. And again, this is just project planning 101. If anybody's used Microsoft project software in the past or worked anywhere where they've had to do any kind of project plan, this is going to be totally familiar to them. In this case now, we are actually now going to assign the work to the people in our firm, each one of these tasks. So for gathering family information, sort of our intake person, we always have Tom Rafferty do that. Okay, so I'm going to assign him that task. And then the assets info, that's Tony Hill's job. He's really good at doing that sort of legwork. And then trust notices, that's the work that I do. Scott Laidlaw is kind of the head firm person I have here. And I'm going to also do the trust documents. This is where you decide, like, who's good at what, who can do things that maybe are more efficiently than others, and you assign it to them. So now I've assigned the timekeeper to each one of these tasks. So let's actually click on them, and here's all the information we created when we created the task. But if I go here to budgets and actuals, you can see here I have Tom Rafferty assigned. Okay, how many hours am I going to budget for him? Well, it usually takes him, during the family gathering part, usually takes about 2 hours. So we have a budgeted cost now based on his professional cost of $300. So we're going to say, hey, we got $300 of budgeted fees. We're going to save that. And now you see we're starting to build a budget, and you'll be able to eventually go back to what the actual work that's being done and put it against the budget and see how you're doing. So let's do that for a couple of these other tasks that we have. So assets info, I'm going to go to the budgets and actuals. And Tony Hill, when he does the assets information, that's usually about 3 hours worth of work. So $600 are going to be my fees. Okay, let's go back and do the rest of these. My trust notices that I'm going to do myself. I'm going to budget myself 3 hours here. That's $750 of fees. And our last task here. We have trust documents, and let's say those take a long time, 5 hours. So that's $1,250. Notice here, this is something that's InTime Solve has, but if you're, kind of the way you manage your matters doesn't have it, it is a nice feature. You can actually create a budget wholly on the task itself, not who you assigned to that task. So this trust document preparation, you could, if you wanted to decide, say, just have I don't care who does the work, I just know I never want to exceed $1,000 in that budget. That's all I'm going to have, I'm going to give that budget for that task. Or you can just say number of hours. Whoever's doing it, it shouldn't take them any more than 4 hours, let's say, whatever it might be. So there are ways within InTime Solve, at least, and expenses as well. If there's any expenses, copies, whatever you might do, you can add that in. So it's a task budget. Doesn't matter who's doing it. Doesn't matter what their billable rate is, but we want to get really granular here and building out what we're going to think is going to be a profitable fixed fee. So we actually do want to assign specific timekeepers to specific tasks, give them a budget of hours, and that will then create our budget of fees. So what eventually ends up happening here is if you go to the budget tab in InTime Solve at least, and again, you can create a budget in InTime Solve for your matter any way you want. You could do it again at a whole matter level. You could put in hours, fees, expenses. Just if you're going to do a flat fee right off the top, like you know how much you're going to charge, period, at the very beginning, you can put that in here as your budget. You can create a budget entirely on just the professionals and their hourly rate. No task. You don't have to create any tasks if you don't want to. You can create a budget based on task codes. That's really good for the leads invoices that some have to do, and so on. But in this case, we're creating the very granular matter budget that will allow us to quote to our client a good fixed fee and be able to show them, here's all the work I'm going to do. Here's all the tasks I'm going to accomplish in the course of meeting your needs. In this case now, we have our budgeted hours and what the fees are going to be for that. So right now we have $2,900 that we have budgeted for this work, for this client. Great, wonderful. Maybe you pad it and say, okay, it's a $3,000 is going to be the fixed fee. And you feel really confident that you're not going to lose your shirt on that. So that's the front side. This is what you could present to your client, show them the various, right now we have 4 tasks in 2 phases, whatever it ends up being. But now in real time, as you start to create your budget, actually, I should say, as you start doing the work for your budget, here's a couple of things you can do that really, we talked about the integration between your time and billing system and your legal project management. This is where it comes into play. I can edit these tasks and say, do I want to prevent me from exceeding the number of hours and fees that I've budgeted? And we're going to do it for the trust preparation stuff. So let's say we're going to, and I'll show you what that does in InTime Solve at least, okay? What you can do then is, first of all, we talked about how communicate to your attorneys themselves, what's the work they have to do. We have a to-do list here in InTime Solve, and I could go look at, choose Tom Rafferty's. I'm going to look at his to-dos, and here's our March webinar. He's got that will preparation, gather family info. So he can come in here, see the tasks he has assigned to himself, click on them and see, well, what was budgeted to me? I got 2 hours to do this task. Wonderful. So again, the people who are actually doing the work know ahead of time the budget for it. In InTime Solve, you can also create, enter these times in various places. You could do it right from the task screen that you have, your to-do list. You could create the time entry here, and if you click on it, you'll notice, it pops up. It's all pre-populated, so all I have to do is put in the hours that you worked on this. You could also do it straight from the matter plan itself. So let's go back to the matter and our task plan, and you could say, so that was Tom Rafferty, I think, that we had. Let's double check that, who we assigned this to. So I make sure I do the right time entry to the right person. Yeah, Tom Rafferty is going to do the gather family information. Now, we did not check that box for this task he could exceed the budget. But let's see what happens when he exceeds the budget. Let's say that he just does like 10 hours worth of work. He's going to just blow this budget away. Oh, professionals required. My fault. Sorry. Tom Rafferty, 10 hours. In this case, because we did not check this task as not, we are allowing it to exceed the budget. You do get a warning that it was saved. However, the following budget has exceeded. So you get that warning light. Down here with these trust preparations one that were assigned to me, we check the box to prevent me from exceeding the budget. So in this case, if I put in my 10 hours and I hit save, task assignment fees budget exceeded. You can't actually make the time entry. So in real time, you've exceeded the budget. Now I have to do that walk of shame down to the senior partner's office and say, I was budgeted like 2 hours to do this work and I actually spent 10 hours. And so I'm going to exceed the budget. Sorry about that. So you can in real time see how you're doing against the budget that you've created. A nice tool obviously with InTime Solve to make sure that your budget is not going to be exceeded. Now, the last part of the puzzle is that once you've built out this estate plan, let's say, and you do a lot of estate planning, simply save this as a template and we'll call this the March webinar estate plan. And again, you can give it a description. So now, the next time you have to do an estate plan for a client, or let's just go find some random client or matter, or let's just say for Best Buy here, well, actually, let's do it here. I'm going to create a new matter. I'm going to do it for Best Buy, and I'm going to call this estate plan. I use Best Buy because they're headquartered here in Minneapolis. And now I go to my task tab, and I say, hey, create this task, all these tasks from a template I have. And then I just select, here's my March webinar estate plan. I hit save, and there they all are. And then I can check the box here. Oh, refresh the screen. To then actually go about assigning my professionals just like before. It's not going to, when you have a template, it's not going to automatically keep the same people that you have assigned for it, because obviously there's flexibility you need to have. But all the tasks and phases are here. And then, so the bones of the work are here. The bones of the matter plan are here. The bones of the budget are ready to roll. And then you just, populate as needed. So the template part is an important component of creating a really good, successful budget plan. But as you can see, you can confidently then present to your client a fixed fee based on the tasks you know you have to complete. The right timekeepers are doing the right tasks. You budget the hours. You may not get it right the first time, but you're going to get it right eventually. And then you have a very confident fixed fee that you can present to people. Okay, so that all sounds well and good, right? It sounds like a piece of cake. You could set up some Excel spreadsheets, lay out your matter project, as I've mentioned several times. You could probably whip up some formulas that would calculate the billable rate to your attorneys based on the hours you assign for the tasks and so on. And if you have somebody in your office who has taken a Microsoft project class or knows Excel really well, they could probably set this up for you. But it is going to take a lot of time and work. And one kicker is it's not going to update in real time as you're making time entries against the tasks that you've assigned to your timekeeper. So you could have those uh-oh moments where you generate the invoice and you realize that, oh my gosh, I have this fixed fee here that I presented to them that was going to be $5,000, but based on my attorney's billable rates, we did $6,000 worth of work. You don't have those moments when you can track your budget in real time. So it may not be quite such a piece of cake to do. Hopefully you've seen that, and hopefully you've seen that InTime Solve can really help in creating that matter budget that can be razor sharp for you. So at the end of the day, here's where we want to get to. We want to get to the client promised land of having that happy client. They know what they're paying. That details that you show them will breed confidence that they're getting their money's worth. They feel like, yeah, all right, I see everything that you're doing with me. This makes complete sense. They feel very educated about the scope of the matter and the work that you're doing. And now they can provide that feedback too. You present all this to them. You present that matter plan ahead of time with all the details, and you can leave off the specific billable rates and the calculations of hours and so on. You could present it sort of any way you want. But now it's more of a collaborative effort between you and your client, where they can provide feedback. You're more of a team now. You can say, here's where maybe some bottlenecks might occur. Here's me, I'm confident, I know for a fact I'll be able to get all this done in like 2 hours, just so you know. So it's a way to them, the client feels like they're invested, they know what's happening and going on, and you've delivered on the expectations that were laid out in the beginning. For a firm, the promised land here is that you can calculate the fixed fee or an estimate based on your hourly billing confidently. You're going to be proactively managing the profitability of your firm because you know for a fact that that fixed fee is profitable. By setting goals for each task and assigning the time to your associates, they have very clear expectations of the work expected of them. And then, of course, you can provide those real-time alerts if you're going over budget. Once you get good at this and once you understand and become more efficient at these repetitive type of matters you might handle, you might take 2 hours to do that research initially for a matter you haven't done a lot of spent a lot of time on in the past. Now I'm better at it. It only takes me an hour and a half, but I'm still basing my fixed fee on 2 hours worth of work. So in some ways, I'm gaining a half hour of profit because I know I can charge whatever the total amount is going to be. That's proven. I know it's profitable. Now I can make it even more profitable. And this kind of gets back to what the attorney I talked to a little bit, knowing what the market can handle, knowing you're providing that value, but you're more efficient at providing it. That now creates a higher profit margin for you. Then you can also take a look and see which parts of my practice are generate higher profits based on building out my matter plans. Then you can start to steer your marketing efforts towards those particular practice areas that you know are the most profitable for your firm. You can again start to get laser focused on the type of marketing that you need to do. And you've reached the firm promised land. Okay, so hopefully you found all this very useful for you. A lot of good content. It's Project Planning 101. Create the phases for your matter. Bring the tasks into those phases. Assign timekeepers to each one of those tasks. Budget their hours. Do the calculation of the math based on their billable rate. Roll it all up. You have a matter budget. Do it in InTime Solve. It's going to be fast and efficient. You can save it as a template. You can work against that budget in real time. So here's the deal for joining me for the webinar here today. We will give you one-on-one hands-on training on how to use that fixed fee billing like you saw. I went through it rather quickly. We would spend a good amount of time making sure you're up and running. If you'd like to try InTime Solve for 30 days for free, you can. You go to InTimeSolve.com. When you create your account, just use the promo code fixed fee. You don't need a credit card or anything along those lines to start your free trial with InTime Solve. You have 30 days. It's the fully functioning version of InTime Solve, everything that is good about it. And if you become a InTime Solve paying customer from this webinar, I'm not kidding you with this, I'll send you a $100 Amazon gift card. Because you sat through this webinar and sat down with me, if you go on to become a InTime Solve customer, I will send you a $100 Amazon gift card. Okay, if you have any other questions, you can always email us at sales@timesolve.com. You could email me directly. You got the reminder emails about this webinar from my email address, so you could always email questions to me directly. Or you can call us at 1-800-715-1284. I did have somebody who asked the question, any tips for estimating research time? To me, the best tip on that is you have to somewhat use experience in knowing if you've dealt with a case similar to what you're handling now, how much research time. I mean, you have to sort of be logical about it. This is where you maybe talk to your peers, the network of other attorneys that you have. You could also talk to us. Our billing support staff here at InTime Solve actually worked at law firms before coming to InTime Solve. We have strategically hired our support staff to be people who worked at firms doing the billing. One of them, she is our leads billing expert. She worked at a law firm that had 400 attorneys, and all they did was leads billing, and she was the lead coordinator for generating all leads invoices. So she's the guru there. We have another support person who, he not only did the billing for the law firm, he ran their QuickBooks as well. He did all the accounting. So he's our QuickBooks expert with the integrations we do with QuickBooks. So our staff here will help you with some of those questions you may have. So that is the end of our webinar today of how to create a profitable fixed fee. You can use InTime Solve. You could use any other tools. We think InTime Solve obviously is the best tools for creating a profitable fixed fee, but hopefully you all found a lot of value out of this. And again, I will be sending an email probably tomorrow sometime with a link to the video. I will also send along these slides as a PDF, and you can then watch at your leisure. And again, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me directly. Or you can go to sales@timesolve.com. So I thank you all for joining me. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we hope to hear from you soon, and happy billing, everybody.